Hello everyone, my name is Roland. This is my video tutorial about how to install Virtualbox and install Debian on it to have your own web server. I'm currently running Windows 7. Here's the stats for my computer. First thing you need to do is go to Google, search for Virtualbox, click their Downloads link, and download the appropriate package for your operating system. I'm going to select Windows since I'm running Windows 7. Click Save File. Since I've already got it downloaded, I'm going to hit cancel there, and I'm going to go to my downloads folder. Here's the VirtualBox installation image. Let's go ahead and double click that guy and we'll run through the install real quick. We'll click next. Let's let them install their default packages. They don't install any junk on your system. Click next, next, click yes, install. It's going to pop up a window here asking me if I want to give it administrator privileges. I'm going to click yes. I'm going to go back to Firefox here and let's get Debian. Debian is a Linux operating system that we're going to be using to install our web server on. So let's go ahead and go to their website, Debian. Go to Getting Debian. We're going to get the small installation image, which is the net install. We're going to want the i386 architecture. 90% of the time that's the architecture you're going to want. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. You can go ahead and click Save and click OK and it'll start downloading. I'm going to hit Cancel because I've already got it downloaded in my Downloads folder here. Let's go back to the VirtualBox. Let's start it up. Okay, so here we've got the empty VirtualBox manager. Let's create our first virtual machine. Click New. And next, we're going to do just name it Debian. You can name it anything you'd like here. You don't have to do it. The name doesn't have to be the same as the operating system. It automatically selects Linux and Debian. We click Next. I'm going to give it 512 megs of RAM. You can probably do 256 even if you wanted to. It doesn't really take much to run a simple web server that's not too popular. We're going to click Next. We're going to create our own virtual hard disk here. This is basically going to be a file on your computer that is going VirtualBox will mount and use as the virtual machine's hard disk. I'm going to click Next. I'm going to use the default format. We're going to choose dynamically allocated. That way, if we used fixed sized, it would, if we chose like 20 gigs of space, it would use up 20 gig of space on your computer. I'm going to do dynamically allocated so I can have, up to a terabyte or even more for the virtual hard disk, but it will only use as much as there is data on there. So I'm going to click Next. We're going to go ahead and give it 20 gigabytes. We're going to click Next. Create that hard disk. Create the virtual machine. Okay, so here's our basic setup here. Let's go to the settings of the virtual machine. So in here we can go to System. We can add more RAM, take away RAM, change the boot order, or add and remove processors depending on how many your computer's got. I'm going to leave it on 1 and 512 since this is a simple web server. Let's go ahead and mount the Debian ISO here. So we're going to click on Storage, go to our empty virtual bay. We're going to choose our virtual disk. We'll just navigate to it, Downloads, Debian, and then so now we've got Debian mounted in that virtual bay. Let's go to Network. I'm going to be changing the network from NAT. NAT is the default for VirtualBox. It's really handy if you just want to have a machine running in, like if you've got Mac or something and you want to just have a quick Windows virtual machine to run specific programs on. It'll have internet access and share it with your computer. I'm going to go ahead and select Bridged though. Bridged is going to share the actual network card, so that way I can get an IP address from my router just like my normal computer does. So if you look on NAT, it has port forwarding here. Port forwarding, you can add ports to forward on your local machine to forward to the virtual machine, but we don't want to mess with that. We just want to have its own dedicated IP address, so all ports are automatically on the virtual machine since it has its own IP address. I'm going to click OK, and let's go ahead and start this virtual machine up. So here is the window for our virtual machine. We can choose install or graphical install. Graphical install will require a mouse. I'm going to just choose regular text install since it's faster. I'm going to go ahead and just for demonstration purposes show you the VirtualBox image that it's got on here. So if you go to your home folder and then go to VirtualBox VMs, then choose the name of it, and we chose Debian. This isn't the name of the operating system, this is the name we chose for the virtual machine here as well. You can see here the VDI, that is the disk image for the virtual machine. So let's go ahead and start installing. I'm going to click install, hit enter on that. I'll be using keyboard only for this. As you can see, my mouse is just going to sit over there. I'm going to choose English as my default language, United States, American English for my keyboard. Okay, it's getting a DHCP address from my router right now. It'll get a real IP address on my local network. That way I can treat it like a real machine and I can view it from this machine and everything. It'll be really nice. I'm going to leave the default host name here, and you can choose whatever domain name you want and just type it in there. For the root password, I'm just going to use a simple password just for this demonstration. You're going to want to choose a nice secure password. I'd recommend uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols at least 10 characters long. Go ahead and click continue. Type in the full name of the user. I'm just going to do a simple user, and this is the username. And then do a password. Again, I'd recommend the same rules as the root password. Choose your current location. So now it's going to be loading some components and things so we can partition the disks. So I'm going to do guided use entire disk, just nice and simple for this virtual machine. Choose the only hard disk, and then we're going to put all the partitions on one drive. We'll just let it choose what it wants. So you can see here we've got our root partition with our ext3 20 gigabytes of space. Then we've got our logical here that's swap, that it uses it when it runs out of RAM. And we'll just leave that there. We'll click finish partitioning, write changes to disk. Yes, we want to write changes. Now it's going to be formatting the single drive so that I can start installing things. So if you watch over here, you can see that it's going to be writing files to the disk. So this is a 20 gig disk image, but since it's dynamically allocated, we aren't using 20 gigs. It's only 400 megs. It's going to get up to a couple of gigs, but it won't be the full 20 unless you use the full 20 on the virtual machine. If you're worried about running out of space on your virtual machine, if this is going to be a media server or a web server with a whole lot of files, if you have like an image server or something, to share with your family or something like that, you're going to want to give it a lot of space, probably a terabyte or something. It depends on how much space you have on your hard drive. Currently, right now, I only have 236 gigabytes hard drive, so I can't put that up as high as I would recommend. So go here, and we got to choose which package manager we like to use. Let's go ahead and find United States here, and then choose your mirror. I'm just going to use the default FTP on Debian.org. You can enter a proxy here if you need to, and any username and password and things. It's got an example right there. I don't have one, so I'm just going to hit continue. Right now it's going to scan the mirror for available packages and set up and get the latest files for your virtual machine. That way it'll be up to date and have all the security holes and things all patched up, because it's going to be using the latest images. Alright, while this is installing, I'm going to run through a couple of simple features on VirtualBox. Down on the bottom here of your virtual machine, you've got kind of statistics about what's going on. You can see there's the hard drive, and this is the currently mounted disk, so you can unmount and mount things while it's running. You can see that it's writing to the disk here when it goes with a little red bleep going on there. Here's our network. You can see it grabbing those files constantly. You can share folders and view your other information about your machine. So another nice thing is you can do switch to full screen, and here's the information about how to switch back. So we got a nice full screen view of it. If it had more, if the image was larger on the virtual machine, you could see more. So I hit right control, so I got my mouse back, and now I can switch back to scaled mode. I believe yeah, we can just switch back to scaled mode here. Okay, it's done. So they've got a popularity contest here. Basically, they're just trying to figure out who's using what packages. You can go ahead and do their package survey if you'd like, but I'm going to go ahead and click no. Okay, so here's the type of software we can install. So we got the graphical desktop environment. This is what you're going to want to do if you want your, if you wanted a desktop environment on it. Since this is going to be a web server and we're going to be managing it using SSH, we don't need the graphical. So I'm going to hit space on that and deselect it. We got several other things we can choose from. I'm going to add web server since this is going to be a web server. You can do DNS, file server, a mail server, SQL database, and SSH. So we're going to be using this to manage SSH, so we're going to go ahead and check that with space. Okay, I'm going to hit tab and continue. So now it's going to be downloading and installing that software that I just selected. What it was doing before when it was downloading was getting just the base standard files for the Debian operating system. Again, down here you can see that it's constantly talking on the internet, grabbing all of these files. You can also, on Debian.org, you can grab whole images, so download large installation images, and you can, I'll show you here, you can grab the stable release here, and then choose your architecture. So I'd recommend DVD since it's those are pretty standard now, and nice and large. So we go to i386 and you can download the whole repositories and things here, which is nice in case your computer won't have the internet. And then you can have your own personal copy of the operating system and share that. Let's go back to the VirtualBox here, and we'll wait for it to finish installing. It's going to take just a few more minutes. Okay, it's finished installing, and it wants to know if we want to install the grub bootloader. This is going to help the machine boot into Debian. So since this is on our virtual machine, we're just going to click yes. It's going to install that into the dev SDA. It's going to finish writing a couple of changes to the disk, and we just hit continue. And it's going to power off the machine and boot into our new Debian install. So here we got our grub bootloader that I was just talking about. There's recovery mode. We're just going to want normal mode. Normally it's just going to it'll just select it and continue on for you, but since I moved my cursor here, then it waited for me to make my selection. So I'm going to hit enter. Nice quick boot. As you can see, it's already booted into our operating system. So I'm going to type in the username that we did, which is root, and we'll hit enter here, and we'll type in the password. We now have our own Debian virtual machine running. So I'm going to go ahead and get its IP address, and its IP address is 10.10.67. You can see that under ETH0 here. So I'm going to go ahead and type that into our web browser here. And you can see on our local network I can reach 10.10.67 on port 80. So I'm going to go ahead and show you port 80 here. And if you needed to, you could share port 80 on your router, and so people on the internet could directly access this machine, but you'll have to change your router settings for that. But currently with this virtual machine running, only local machines inside the local network can reach it on port 80. So let's go ahead and log out of root here, and I'll show you. We can just log into the other user as well, type in the username and password, and then we can switch over to root. And yeah, that's our virtual machine running there. So if you want to, if you have your machine running and you don't want to wait for it to boot every time, you can go to the X here and exit save the machine state. When you hit save the machine state, it's going to take the current RAM of the computer, the 512 megs of RAM that we selected, and it's going to write that to your computer's hard drive, not to the virtual machine's hard drive, and so that way you can boot into the machine instantly, so you don't have to wait for it to boot back up. So I'm going to click OK, saving it, and saved it. So now we can click start, and it restores it, and there it is. So now we can log into root and do whatever we want and power off the machine and boot it back up. let's show you how to make a quick backup of your Debian. So let's say you got your web stuff switched over to what you want it to be, and you want to make a copy of this. So you just hit File, Export Appliance, choose Debian, click Next, and write to where you want to. We'll just do the default place in Documents. We'll export the Debian appliance. So basically this is going to take all of the settings, the actual hard drive, the virtual hard drive of the Debian appliance, and it's going to write it all to this current this file. So that way you can send this file to a friend or something, and they can load that and into their virtual Oracle VirtualBox and be able to boot into the exact same operating system as you, and with all of the setting changes and everything. And it's also handy because now we have a backup of it, so if I make some changes here, so we're going to go ahead and start it back up. We'll do boot into Debian real quick. Do our user, type in the password. In the current directory I did an ls, there's nothing in the directory, so I'm going to go ahead and touch a file. File here. We'll do an ls so you can see that we have file in there. So I'm going to head and power off the machine. Oh, if I was root, I'd go ahead and power off the machine. And then we can go ahead and delete this guy here. We'll say remove, and you can just remove only, which will remove basically the settings but leave the hard disk, or you can say delete all files, which will delete all the settings and the hard disk. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all files. Now we have our virtual machine removed. Now let's go ahead and re-import our saved one. So we can go to File, Import, go to Choose, grab Debian, click Next. So it's got our settings that we had there. We can change these if we need to, and click Import. It's going to open that up and put the virtual disk and the virtual settings all back onto your computer, so we can boot back into Debian. So I'm going to go ahead and start it back up. And since we exported that the appliance before we had made those changes, if we go in as user and we do an ls on the directory, there's nothing there because it wrote the hard disk to this file, which is 500 megs, and we didn't lose any of our settings. So if you got a Windows virtual machine and you get a virus or something, if you have exported it, then you can re-import it and it'll wipe out that virus because it does not exist on that disk image. So I went ahead and power off the machine. Alright, that's it for my tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it and it was informative.